Hope is on the way. Oh, I didn't hear the hope is on the way. Tell them again, wake up. Hope is on the way. All right. Amen. Amen. We have arrived at the Advent season. Now, it can be confusing. The Advent season can be confusing because it appears, especially if people looking on from the outside, it appears that we are anticipating something that has already occurred. The coming of the promised one. Jesus has already been born, someone could rightly say. So what are you anticipating? But as learners and followers of the promised one, our observance in this season is both retrospective and prospective. We look back to discern what to look for. We look back to see if there is any indication about what God is going to do in the future. And so Advent is a recognition, a retrospective look that God fulfilled God's promise to send an anointed one who will reveal God's reign of justice and righteousness. And prospectively, we believe that Jesus will come again in a final act of consummation of God's plan of reconciliation for all God's creation. Now, you should know by now, I'm not talking about some kind of fiery Armageddon. If you missed those sermons, go back and look at it. But I'm talking about that final act where we get to bask in the glory of God. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I'm hopeful. And we know that the first week of Advent, the beginning of the Christian year, which is why I said Happy New Year, the first day or the first Sunday of the Christian New Year is focused on the theme of hope. Now, it is a pregnant hope filled with waiting, watchful waiting expectation for something big and transformative to unfold. Believing that God is audacious, wild, is going to do something amazing. But an obvious question again to all of us who live in hope. Someone can rightly ask us, what's the point of hoping when what is to occur is not known? What exactly are you hoping for? And I think that's a fair question for us who talk about hope. We have an obligation to kind of speak some truth, because someone can look all around and say the threat of terrorism, the violent wars and terrors in the Middle East, and most recently in Europe, the gun violence here in the USA, the attacks just on 2 nights ago on Planned Parenthood, attacks in schools, the racial strife and mistrust of law enforcement here in this community and communities throughout the USA, the global warming and the exploitation of the natural resources of the earth. The world is messed up. What are you hoping for? What do you have to look forward to? And this reality is painful and depressing, and we do not deny that it looks hopeless. But our goal is to find a way back and imagine a new reality full of promise and renewal and restoration. In essence, people who come here day in and day out, week after week, we have hope. Will you pray with me? Thank you, O God, for bringing us to this new year, to this season of Advent. Thank you for this worship celebration and the people who have gathered here. Thank you for your presence in our midst. Thank you for what you've already done. Use this moment, this preaching moment, and hallow it, O God. Take it, let it be yours, so that you may reveal yourself to your people. They may hear a word from you and be transformed. Work through these lips of clay. Speak to your people that they may hear. The words of my mouth and meditation of every heart present be acceptable with thee, O God, our Redeemer and our refuge. Amen. Yes, we have hope. We talk about hope. The season of Advent reminds us that hope is not some empty, easy buzzword used to soothe the people living in a hard reality. No, on the contrary. We have hope because it is a signifier of the real possibility of change. Hope is a motivator to expect things won't always be the way they are. Things can and will get better. I liken Advent to a journey in the wilderness where there's just tree cover everywhere. But it's like a wilderness which the sun lights the sky. And you know that if you keep walking in that direction, if you keep finding your way through, you will come to the warm embrace of an expected safety. Yet you don't know how long the journey is. You just have to keep plowing your way through. And the coldness and uncertainty of the wilderness sometimes make you wonder, oh, is it possible there's something on the other side? And there may be fear and there may be distress. And then the question for us is there a divine word of hope and restoration for us? Is God's promise of justice and righteousness available? I suspect that these are the questions that dogged the prophet Jeremiah in our reading today. I believe that he must have been reminded of God's faithfulness in the midst of his confinement in prison, when he hears a word from God that now is the time to call on the Lord, and God will answer. You see, Jeremiah had spent most of his time before this moment providing oracles of judgment, doing what prophets do. You messed up, and God is mad at you. Bad news that when they saw him come, oh, here comes Jeremiah. That spoil sport, that old noisy, nosy busybody, telling us about how mad God is. We don't want to hear it anymore. And so Jeremiah finally hears again from God. He spent his time doing what God told him to do earlier. God told him to pluck up and pull down. Tell him about what's going to happen. The people of Israel are so willful and disobedient, I'm about to put them in exile. And so Jeremiah did that, telling them all of the bad news and the distressful and hopelessness of their plight. But then a new word of restoration comes to him while he's in prison. A new word from God saying, I'm giving them a new oracle, a new prophecy of deliverance. And this is now your task, Jeremiah. You are now to build and to plant. Oh, I'm about to do something new. You see, this passage falls in what the scholars call the little book of consolation. It is Jeremiah's poetic affirmation that God is about to rescue the people from exile. That their whole distressful state will end up in being restored. They will be healed. They will be made whole again. It includes God's promise that God will make a new covenant with God's people, in which the law will be written on their hearts, not just on paper. So their whole lives will be transformed. God further consoles the people by telling them that you are no longer going to be an exile people. You're going to live in safety, security, and prosperity. I'm going to rebuild the city. Oh, but the people don't know when it's going to happen. So they have to endure the present reality of exile. They have to experience what exile was, this catastrophic, disorienting experience. Ripped apart from what they knew and loved. Judah fallen, Jerusalem destroyed, the temple razed. Oh, they lost everything. Their culture, their institutions, their identity. And so such a traumatic experience, when they hear it, they have to wonder, what are you talking about? We've been dislocated. We don't know where we're going. We were elected to be in covenant with God, and now it's all over. What are you talking about, Jeremiah? Is there hope? Oh, they were in mourning. And the questions just kept coming at them. Why did suffering befall us? Even for all those of us who tried to obey. Is God faithful? Oh, it's all right to ask it. Is God faithful to us? Is there any hope? Oh, it's all right to ask the question. Is there any hope? And then Jeremiah comes with a bold affirmative answer. The days are surely coming when I will fulfill the promise I made to you. God is faithful. There is hope in the wilderness. And in case they were not clear to which promise God was referring, the deliverance says, I'm going to raise up somebody, someone in the line of David, who will execute justice and righteousness. Oh, I don't think you hear the message. The message is there is hope. There is hope. Your situation is not hopeless. Your situation is not the end of the story. There is hope. Awaken to the possibility that God, who's delivered you before, is about to deliver you again. Let your imagination run wild in a bold and audacious God who made a promise to Abraham and David and to all their descendants. Awaken to the hope that justice and righteousness will brighten your future. The days are surely coming when I will fulfill the promise I made to you. Oh, don't you wish people talk like that again today? The days are coming when I will fulfill the promise I made to you. Oh, can they trust it? Can they believe it? Jeremiah's prophecy says, awaken to hope. You can trust God again. But this new leader that God is promising won't be one of those fixers and operators and handlers. No, this new leader will not be a leader who justifies the failure to care for the widow and the orphan and the stranger. Oh, Mary sang about it. Mary, the mother of Jesus, she's saying about God bringing someone who will scatter the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. Oh, God has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. God has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. The Gospel of John tells us that God has given this new king authority to execute judgment because he is the Son of Man. And then there's something else that he promises. There's going to be a new city. A new city. Oh, the city won't be a geography or a location. It's going to be something that recognizes the presence of God. And the city is going to be called The Lord is Our Righteousness. Oh, don't you want to live in a place with the name The Lord is Our Righteousness? Oh, where do you live? Oh, I live in a place called The Lord is Our Righteousness. Oh, what is life like there? Oh, it's about justice. Oh, it's about, where do you live? Oh, the Lord is our right. Oh, people thought they were crazy. Where are you going to live? I'm living in the city called The Lord is Our Righteousness. Look at God, so bold and audacious. Change the name of a city to show you where it's all going to be at. Oh, don't you want to live there? Don't you want to be there? Oh, I don't think you hear me. Tell your neighbor, the Lord is our righteousness. That's where I want to live. Oh, the rent is free. Oh, you get to eat good food. Oh, you don't have to worry about anybody stealing anything from you. Oh, I want to live. This is the promise. The promise that God made. I bet you're saying, preacher, you done lost your mind. But let me tell you, this is what hope looks like. Oh, the reality of our world makes us think that it is all hopeless. The reality of the world tells you that God isn't going to do anything about it. The reality of the world tells you that it's no use in having any imagination, but I want you to have imagination about God. Oh, I know the violence and the repression, the fear and the anxiety, the strife and the division, the cynicism and the nihilism, the persecution and the domination. You have to wonder, this is what exile feels like. We have fewer things to which to look forward. Our social and political and religious rhetoric sound less hopeful than ever before. Please, if you want hope, don't listen to Trump. Oh, and when people do manage to speak in a hopeful turn, it feels hollow and inauthentic, especially when it's not anchored in reality. Oh, so for some of us, we just want to feel hope again. We want to feel hope again. So Advent, for some of us, have simply become a time waiting for Christmas. That's all Advent has become. But I want to caution you. If Christmas is the destination of our Advent observance, then we are not awakening to hope. Oh, God is bigger than that. God is bigger than that. I don't want to just wait for Christmas. I want the big, bold, audacious God to transform this entire world. I want to live in a place called the Lord is our righteousness, where I'm sure that justice and righteousness is the law of the land. Oh, I don't want to just wait for Christmas. Christmas is not enough for me. And it shouldn't be enough for you. Pastor, what does awakening to hope look like? How do we live in a way that Christmas doesn't become our destination? How do we live in a way that Christmas can only be a foretaste of the new reality that God is about to bring? Well, I tell you how to do it. Wait expectantly for God to do what God does best, to deliver when it all seems hopeless. Oh, we start by living hopeful lives, anticipating, expecting that the reality around us is not the whole story or the end of the story. We live in sure knowledge that what looks dead, what feels old and stale, what looks like defeat and scarcity and barrenness, in God's hand it will be restored. That's how we live. We begin by living every day right now in a new way, embracing right now justice and righteousness. When people look at you, wow, what are you doing? How are you behaving this way? It is because I'm just. Oh, how do you feel so? How can you celebrate this way? Because I know righteousness. Righteousness is the natural order of the day. Oh, it means letting our imagination run wild as part of God's audacious capacity for and character of renewal and restoration throughout history. Throughout history, we've seen it. We've seen the kind of power and movement that can be created when we have a theological imagination that lets God do big things. Oh, some wondered what made Martin Luther King Jr. so hopeful in the midst of racial violence and discrimination. What they failed to do was imagine with him that the days are surely coming. Oh, I don't think you heard me. The days are surely coming. I don't feel, it didn't say, I think there will come a day. No, the days are surely coming. Oh, I suspect it might happen. No, the days are surely coming. If we just do this, maybe the days are surely coming. And I believe Martin Luther King still understood that. Oh, some wondered, why were those Stonewall rioters and Harvey Milk so hopeful about life for LGBTQ people when they were in such midst of hate and persecution? Oh, but people failed to imagine. Oh, they couldn't see it. Oh, some of those first people who walked up there to get married, they said, you out of your mind. Oh, that's because they didn't have any imagination. Oh, that's what hope is. Imagining God being God. Imagining that things can unfold and change right before us. And seeing all the ways that divine justice and righteousness have infiltrated even the darkest places in the world. Oh, imagine a healed and restored land whose very life and character can be summed up in a new name. The Lord is our righteousness. Oh, boy, I tell you, I want to live there. So turn around and tell your neighbor, wake up. Wake up. Hope is on the way.